fifth grade, I am here to show you today how to take your sketch and put it onto your final drawing and then begin to paint your pieces. If you have not already numbered your sketch, go through, number your layers so that you know what number of values you're going to need. I can make these two trees the same, so I'm going to need 6 different values. Looking at what I did before, I want to draw it again on the big paper, but this time I want to draw it so the pencil is barely visible. I am going to be pressing harder so you can see it, but you want to do it so that you can barely see your values. Whatever line from your sketch that you liked, keep it the same. Make sure you can see those different separations, and if you want to make minor changes, I added another mountain there, you can do that as well. The real trick is you want to try to do it so that the paper's full and that you don't have those see-through spaces. So now I'm really going to be focusing on the shape of this tree. Remember in the sketch I said it didn't have to be perfect. Now you want it to be a little bit more meticulous so that it looks like what you actually want the shape to look like. So I'm going to be taking my time a little bit more, making it the shape that I want it to be on here. And I wanted a second tree, so I'm going to focus on the shape of that tree, making it look like what I really wanted it to. Since these two shapes overlap and they're going to be the same, anywhere where they meet, I can actually erase. So I know that this whole thing is going to be painted the same shade when I get to painting my shades. This weird triangle shape that's between it, I'm going to have to figure out what value needs to go there, and that will happen once I finish the rest of my drawing. So I have this hill that kind of comes up and starts behind this tree, kind of arcs up, comes down, and then I have another one that comes through here, and it looks like it actually might go from one side to the other here. So I also want to think, this is the values that I've done here. I do not want to number on here because the watercolors will show through my final and I don't want to see it. When you start painting, you need to paint with your hue. So looking back, look at your value scale, decide what you wanted to do. I only made a value scale that goes up to 5, but I have 6 values. So I need to decide, am I gonna make another lighter one or another darker one? Personally, it's easier to go darker than it is to go lighter. So I'm just gonna add another one for a 6. And now know it needs to be darker than this last one that I did before. So I'm gonna start painting my hue first. Remember, hue is your color. If I need to test out a color, the best place to do that is on my practice. But remember, your hue is your color that you're using. So get your stuff together, get your brush ready, and you wanna activate this paint with your hue and paint it whatever color you're going to make it. So my 3 shape is my hue, and that is the shape that's 1, 2, 3 would be right here. So I know that that entire shape is going to get painted the plain blue right out of the container. So the more I pet this color in here, the more that hue gets on my brush, the brighter it's going to be. And I'm going to very carefully, on my final, apply my hue, tiptoeing around those edges, filling in that section, trying as hard as I can to cover those pencil lines if I can see them. Tiptoeing, 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 kind of creating a paint by number now. Now that I have those edges outlined, I know that anything inside of there is going to be the plain hue of my color. The plain blue. No tints, no shades yet. I might need more water to activate the color, but I have to make sure that I am getting as much saturation on that paintbrush as I had before, so I can spread that out and it looks even. Now remember, just like we did for our practice tints and shades, you're gonna work on your tints today. So the only thing we're gonna be doing is painting the lighter ones today. You wanna leave time for this to dry, and we'll do our shades next time. The easiest way to make a tint is to make and start with the white parts. So I'm gonna use plain water. My water has already been tinted. it might be tinted enough if you're using a small amount of water that you could actually use from where you washed your brush off as your water. If it's too light, you might want to test it out. Look, you can see my water on this is actually working right out of my container, but I need enough of it to make this work. So in my water dish today, since I'm only focusing on my tints, I might want to actually purposefully put more blue in here to tint the water plain blue and then test this out. It's a little diluted. I could also, if I feel like it's too much, put enough water on my white plastic part of my tray that I think will paint this entire section. So I'm getting the plain water out of my dish. I'm putting it on the lid of my tray, just the plain water. So I'm purposefully dropping water on here. I want to make enough that I probably have to do this and this. So I'm going to need a lot of water for this. So putting it on here. I can always add more later, but it's better if I have enough to do one value at a time. Now I'm going to get my blue and mix it in here. Hopefully that is a light tint of blue. I can test it out, and when I spread out this color, you can see it is pretty light. So I can test it on my practice paper, and then I can start to apply my value and spread that out. This is why covering your pencils or drawing really lightly with the pencil is going to be really key, because you want to make sure that you go along that edge and there is a clear separation of color between your 1 value and your 2 value. Then once you have that clear separation line, you can grab this water and just start spreading it out. You want to be careful of puddles in Tints and Shades paintings, because that can actually change the color of your painting. So remember, pick up that puddle, move it around the page if you can. So if it starts to puddle on this side, move it over here. That first value, remember, should be the absolute lightest value you have. So it's barely the white of the paper with just a little bit of color on it. So you can see I painted on here quickly and it's going to start to dry. I may need to take a minute and let this dry and think about, now how can I get these color between these two to be something in the middle? Luckily, I have enough water on here that I think all I should have to do is take my blue and add more blue to this. Now this is where you're really gonna have to use your practice papers to come into play, because you wanna make sure that it's something in between. So I'm gonna use my practice paper, and I added a couple blues to this. I wanna test this out. Do I think this is darker than the first one I made? Putting it next to it, yes. But is it somewhere closer in between? No, I think I need to make it a little bit darker. So I'm gonna put more blue on here, and then I'll test that one out. Grabbing the paint right from there, that looks a little bit darker. I think that's the one I'm gonna go with. Now because I just painted this and it's wet, you wanna be careful that it's not going to run and mix. You want a clear separated line between the two. So maybe starting up here along that lighter tint, spreading out that color, trying my best to follow along that pencil line to make those tints stand out from one another. Then I can come along and I'm going to very carefully make my next tint right next to it. And you can honestly see the good contrast now. It looks like 3 different color blues, and all I did was add more water to it. If I am using liquid paint, then I'd be starting with plain white and slowly adding my blue to it to make my lighter value, and then adding a little bit more blue to that to make it a little bit darker as well. So you can see, now that I've done those two, I have a clear separation. If I needed to, and I thought this wasn't quite dark enough, I wanted something in between because the contrast just isn't there, I can actually take the hue that I made, or the tint that I made, and just put another layer of color on top. And you can see that that's gonna soak in. And just change the color one more time, just make it a little bit deeper. So I think that looks even better. So putting 2 layers on top could be an option. The main thing is that you want to see the difference. I have my baby light blue my medium blue, and then my regular hue is here. These spaces we will paint next time with shades. So we'll be making them darker. So just really practice. Remember, you might spend a lot of time practicing your colors to make sure that they're gonna fit your piece.